Welcome back. As we continue to talk to our panel on all things Trump and Russia before we get some other issues, there's certainly no lack of content to cover. In fact, to the contrary. First up, can President Trump pardon Michael Flynn? Think about it. If he did, how much that would change this conversation potentially. It's certainly been a question buzzing in D.C. since Monday when Flynn was arrested, charged with lying to the FBI, and when the world first learned that Flynn was cooperating with a special counsel investigation. The president, he's been asked about a Flynn pardon quite a few times since Monday, but for once, he's not saying much.
Any plans to pardon General Flynn, Mr. President?
Thank you very much.
Any plans to pardon General Flynn, Mr. President?
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
We'll see what happens. Well, I feel badly for General Flynn. I feel very badly. He's led a very strong life. Hillary Clinton lied many times to the FBI. Nothing happened to her. Flynn lied, and they destroyed his life.
It's not often he comes to the defense of many folks here. Keep that in context. Now, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, though, is talking, but she's not saying that much either.
Would he consider pardoning him?
I'm not aware of that has come up or any process or decision on that front. I think before we start discussing the pardons for individuals, we should see, what happens in specific cases too.
So is it fair to say it's on the table?
No, I just said I haven't had the conversation with them because I don't feel that it's necessary until, you get further down the road and determine whether or not that's even something needed.
So, Mimi, if he wanted to, could he?
I mean, I guess he could. I think it would be, first of all, if the desired result of a pardon is, okay, now Flynn can't cooperate and provide information against me and my inner circle, I'm not sure it would accomplish that. And look, this is pure speculation, but that could have something to do with what's going on here with Flynn. I mean, if he were pardoned on 1001, Flynn is not cooperating because of jail time that he's facing on 1001 charge. He's facing, 6 months, really. I mean, it's a 5-year statutory max, but he's facing a lot less than that in reality. That's how the guidelines work. So that's not why Flynn's cooperating, okay? So maybe it has something to do with his son. Maybe it has to do with other charges that are out there that we've been sort of, speculating about. Maybe it has to do with assets that they could seize. So there's a lot of other factors going on here. So even
and is it mitigated only by the fact that Mueller at some point was bringing in states' attorney generals? And as I understand it, if you're charged by the state rather than by the federal government, you can't be pardoned by the president.
True, and so right. I mean, there's as we've discussed again in terms of immunity. I keep bringing that up, but he doesn't have immunity as to any of these other sort of transactions that seem suspicious, at least. That I'm guessing we're going to hear more about. And so even if those were pardoned by Trump in some way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I want to, if I could, because I got so much I want to get into with this, guys. Now, I want to get into some of the particular players in here from Flynn. Let's look at some of the other key folks within the Trump ambit here and talk about possible legal jeopardy. Jared Kushner in the Trump Tower meeting with a Russian attorney. We talked about that when looking at Donald Trump Jr.'s testimony even today. Flynn also reportedly shared info about his Russian contacts with Kushner. He's also failed to disclose a string of international contacts, including with several Russians and several business conflicts in his disclosure reports. And that's just part of the potential legal jeopardy. How much trouble of these folks do you put on Jared Kushner right now? He's been curiously quiet. Not that he's been Mr. Vocal here as it relates to this crew, but he's almost been invisible.
Yes, I think Jared Kushner is not a particularly talkative person. I don't think at any point prior to even this investigation he said very much. He's been more behind the scenes. But I think when you start putting all of the dots together, it is, to me, closing in on Jared Kushner probably more than anyone else that has not yet been charged. He was at that meeting in June of 2016 with Don Jr. He oversaw the Middle East. He still oversees the Middle East process under Trump. And even if you look at Flynn's plea agreement and you look at what he pled guilty to, one of the false statements he made related to conversations that he had with Russia and other countries about trying, in fact, the the charge with the most teeth is the conversation that he had about delaying the Egypt resolution in the UN to against the additional Israeli settlements. That's Jared Kushner's thing. So when you start,
and timing's a problem for him too, isn't it? In that he spoke before they knew what Flynn said. So basically, he may have made misrepresentations without the benefit of knowing what Flynn has already been saying to Mueller or whatever, or even suspecting what Flynn may have contributed to Mueller as well.
And not only that, he has, in his disclosures, he has repeatedly failed to include various contacts and other things that are required to be disclosed. That has come out.
I want to go through, I'm going to rapidly give out some other names here. Vice President. If anybody thought beforehand that the one person that was immune to all this was Mike Pence, well, when he was fired, Mr. Flynn, it was essentially for lying to Pence. But Pence, turns out, not only was a transition team chairman, he claimed in a TV interview he knew nothing of Flynn's meetings with the Russians. Flynn has said since that Pence was in the loop between him, between Jeff Sessions, who I mentioned before, Hope Hicks, the aforementioned person that Don Jr. apparently tossed under the bus, or at least pushed in front of at least, and now KT McFarland, who may have offered up a little bit too much. Who else in this orbit do you think might be in some of the most jeopardy in addition to Kushner?
Well, I don't think Mike Pence is in the same ballpark as Kushner, but I think what is coming out that's very interesting about Mike Pence is what he said about what Flynn told him about the Russian contacts. And we know that even from the documents that Flynn updated a lot of the senior transition team members, many of whom were in Mar-a-Lago at the end of December, and that there was a conference call about his Russian contacts. Flynn was running the transition team, as you mentioned. Pence was. And so you start to wonder, when Flynn ostensibly lied to Pence about what those conversations were with the Russian ambassador, did Pence really not know anything about it? It's now starting to bubble over a little bit more for Pence. But I still think, in the grand scheme of things, there are a lot of other people who were more on the ground and were going to have lower level conversations with the Russians than Pence.
Another headline, Doug, that came out, and certainly if you turned on Fox News today, it was the first, second, and third story, was about the reports now that Special Counsel Bob Mueller, he canned an investigator from the Russian probe. And some of the folks in certain media circles are saying it proves Mueller's investigation is biased against President Trump. Now, the Post, if you saw it today, they even put the guy's picture on the front cover with the headline, "Fix BN," obviously FBI, a little reach there with the working it in, but they tried. Anti-Trump agent here who let Hillary off the hook. Now, that man is FBI agent Peter Strzok, who was dismissed from Mueller's team this summer after he sent a text mocking the president to a woman that he was having an affair with. There were also claims that he changed a key line in the FBI's report about Hillary Clinton and her emails during the 2016 campaign. A draft in the then FBI Director James Comey's Clinton report claimed that Hillary's behavior was, quote, grossly negligent. Strzok reportedly changed that to, quote, extremely careless, which is what Comey's final report said. And that, says conservative media, is all the proof you need that the fix is in against Trump. Now, just in terms of points of clarification, stupid what he did, but you're allowed in your private life to have political opinions, right? That's not...
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And moreover, just so I understand it, again, guy's an idiot, okay? But he didn't unilaterally make decisions as it related to the investigation, or at the end of the day what Comey was going to say or not here. He didn't work in a vacuum, right?
Of course. I mean, in my personal opinion, it's absurd. He's allowed to have his own opinions. He was speaking to somebody not on the job. It was a girlfriend, I understand. I mean, the real allegation, if it was an allegation, would be whether he was doing something improper. So they kind of coupled that little thing in with the language, which I think is just a technical thing that was probably reviewed by several people before it was placed in there. But Mueller did the right thing. He got rid of the guy, took him off of it, makes it look cleaner.
Finally, for me, the legal team, okay? Now, nobody thinks that Dowd and Ty Cobb here are lightweights. They have the resumes to prove it. but there have been a lot of Keystone Cops moments throughout this, from having a vocal, loud conversation where the Times right near their bureau and where they're known to have, or where they're debating legal strategies, to obviously the text that supposedly Dowd sent on the president's Twitter account, or the tweet I should say. And is there method to the madness here? Is there too many voices in the room from an outside looking in? Because some say, you know, do the scorched earth approach. Some say, no, the last thing you want to do is inflame situations, you know, with Bob Mueller. It doesn't seem to be a coherent plan, at least, as to how they're handling this.
Right. Well, and I think part of that, though, is because you can't explain all of it away this way, but they have a client here who is very hard to control, right? I mean, the first rule for any defense lawyer is to, you know, they tell their client, don't talk, don't write, you know, don't talk about this, don't get yourself in more trouble. And, you know, Trump either has some grand plan in his own mind, or he can't control himself, which I think is probably the more likely explanation.
I'll go with B, yeah.
And so, you know, the tweet is one example, but there have been so many where he says things. I mean, after he fired Comey, when he was interviewed by Lester Holt, I mean, that was like handing, you know, Mueller a...
But still, to send out a tweet, Dowd said he did it, so to send out a tweet in any regard, but to send out a tweet on your client's platform and then basically introduce things that aren't in your client's best interest, a first-year law student wouldn't do that, if in fact he did it.
I mean, if we accept this idea that Dowd sent it out, and look, Dowd is not, I mean, he's a criminal defense lawyer, but I don't know that he's used to representing someone with this political ramifications.
I got to hit a quick break here. Okay, when we come back, I said before that it's not just the Russia investigation involving this